Hollywood's war films have made battle terrifyingly real.
Let's go!
And filmmakers have pushed audiences right up to the front lines, whether on land, on the high seas, or in the air. The power of devastating combat comes alive on the big screen. Coming up, we'll meet the effects expert that helped recreate the invasion of Normandy for The Longest Day. We'll go behind the scenes on such classic films as Platoon, Das Boot, and The Bridge on the River Kwai. And we'll join stars Meg Ryan and Denzel Washington on the blazing set of Courage Under Fire. So tighten your chin straps as we charge into the action, alongside the actors and filmmakers who answer the call when Hollywood declares war. Movie Magic presents Hollywood Declares War.
Commence firing. I want you to remember that no bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country.
As long as artists have tried to capture our world, images of war have stirred human emotions. Motion pictures, though, first filmed by daring newsreel cameramen, then with the cinema wizardry of special effects, allowed audiences to lead the charge.
And action!
Director Ed Zwick and stars Denzel Washington and Meg Ryan have joined a long, rugged line of filmmakers working at the business of war.
Oh. All right, let's go.
Don't ever for 1 minute underestimate the enemy.
The picture is Courage Under Fire, Zwick's fictional account of American forces in the Persian Gulf War.
And cut!
This is the second time Zwick and Washington have teamed up for combat.
Still a great shot. He's got a longer lens.
Okay, I got you.
Having previously filmed the Civil War drama, Glory. In Courage Under Fire, Washington plays an Army officer.
I'm gonna find out the truth, I guarantee you that.
He's investigating the heroism of Ryan's character, Captain Karen Walden, a Medal of Honor nominee.
As soon as it gets dark, we dig in. Then we wait.
For what?
For the good guys.
For Zwick, the main challenge is to immerse the audience in a convincing portrayal of what desert warfare looks and sounds like. To succeed, the director's movie forces, his tanks and troops, had to replicate those seen on television news.
Ed set up a shot where there were like 14 or 15 Abrams tanks moving out. It was in a column and we were up on a kind of a hill shooting down, and the tanks were moving out and the dust was kicking up. You really got a shudder, you know, a chill up your back, because you felt like you were in the middle of a real war.
In combat films, what you see is often extremely realistic. Courage Under Fire's special effects coordinator, Paul Lombardi, is a veteran of the Vietnam dramas Hamburger Hill and Flight of the Intruder, who takes believability very seriously.
The public lived this war as they lived the Vietnam War, but it was even a more visual war than the Vietnam War. So they had the look of the Scud missiles, the streaks of smoke in the sky, the high explosives, the high impact, and have people in close proximity to it.
Action!
Lombardi's explosives,
Sir, fire!
primarily consisting of black powder, gasoline, and molded plastic explosive charges, and the 20 miles of wiring required to detonate them, cost nearly $500,000.
We created barrages of rockets with smoke generators on them. Then we'd send up an explosion to light it.
You know, to get to this
Director Zwick's commitment to accuracy was so strong that 300,000 pounds of steel was used to transform British Centurion tanks into American Abrams models.
Do you or do you not have a target? It's hard to make out, sir.
The way this war was fought with superior equipment that could fire 4,000 meters. These tanks are extremely accurate and powerful. They can see further than we can see.
Along with its punishing, pounding ground action, Courage Under Fire is memorable for its helicopter scenes.
Hey, Dust Off 3, we are going down. Mayday, mayday, this is Dust Off.
Particularly the heart-stopping crash of Meg Ryan's wounded chopper. In reality, Ryan's helicopter crashed without ever flying. It was suspended from a crane by cables, and the scenes of Ryan aloft were filmed with her chopper perched on a truck bed while it was driven past mountainous terrain.
After we slow down that tank!
But perhaps Lombardi's most effective filmmaking coup takes place when fire hits Denzel Washington's tank, and the star appears to be dangerously close to the explosion.
There's nothing better than having the real guy in the explosion. Denzel Washington was right next to the explosion. That's what sells.
For generations of moviegoers, Courage Under Fire will represent what Gulf War combat really looked like, even though it was filmed in Grandview, Texas, just outside El Paso. Filmmakers have often transformed locations into battlefields, whether they're stand-ins for distant war zones or the sites of actual combat. For his 1965 World War II film, Is Paris Burning?, director René Clément recreated scenes of German occupation at sites throughout the French capital.
Come on, men!
In David Lean's 1962 World War I epic, Lawrence of Arabia, the Jordanian city of Aqaba was recreated nearly to scale here on Spain's Costa del Sol. Lean was a master when it came to monumental movie construction. In 1957, he created the classic The Bridge on the River Kwai, based on the true story of rebellious Allied prisoners.
You British prisoners have been chosen to build a bridge across the River Kwai. If you work hard, you will be treated well. But if you do not work hard, you will be punished.
Here's David Lean. He's as far from Hollywood as he could possibly get. He's in a stone quarry in Ceylon. Not only does he have to blow up a bridge, but he has to build it before he blows it up.
With hundreds of local workers, lumber from 1,200 giant trees, and the brute force of scores of elephants, Lean's bridge was completed in 8 months. The construction was supervised by Peter Ducalo in what is now Sri Lanka. Despite torrential subcontinent rains and primitive construction methods, this amazing work of movie magic stood as an eerie reminder of the real-life bridge built by those prisoners of war. The finished bridge was 130 yards long, 50 feet tall, and was strong enough to support a full-size train. To film the climactic demolition of the bridge, 7,000 pounds of TNT had to be placed precisely around the supports. 5 cameramen were positioned to capture the action. The destruction of its towering mass is one of the most dramatic finales ever. David Lean's masterpiece of indomitable courage has outlived many of those who inspired its story. In The Bridge on the River Kwai, and in hundreds of other films, Hollywood has fought the battle for combat realism, and audiences will be able to savor those victories for many years to come. June 6, 1944. The largest invasion force in modern history crossed the English Channel on its way to France.
Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France.
The fighting was fierce. The first Allied soldiers to hit the beach faced unrelenting German fire. There were more than 9,000 casualties. But the course of World War II was changed because of what happened that day, D-Day. It took a five-star general, Dwight D. Eisenhower, to assemble the 150,000 soldiers who carried out the invasion. But it took a powerful Hollywood commander, 20th Century Fox studio chief Darryl F. Zanuck, to recreate this battle on screen 18 years later.
The incredible story of D-Day and the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe always fascinated me, as it was unquestionably the most hazardous undertaking in military history.
Filled with a cast of stars that included John Wayne, Robert Mitchum, and Red Buttons, The Longest Day was a sweeping war epic.
I knew it was going to be a giant of a picture. It had to be if you read the book and you knew what was going on. I mean, this was the invasion, man. I mean, this was it. This was the moment.
Though he'd hired 4 directors, the Imperial Zanuck insisted on personally supervising every shot. He later boasted of having directed over half the film himself.
You know, the word for Zanuck was brilliant. That's what he was. He was a brilliant and very daring motion picture maker.
In fact, it sometimes seemed that Zanuck's authority extended to the American military. Incredibly, he persuaded the 6th Fleet to let him film real beach maneuvers to include in his movie. On film, 22 ships and 1,600 Marines make screen landings right alongside Zanuck's stars. Both actors and extras felt the power and the authenticity of the special effects when they filmed those invasion scenes.
The Longest Day was probably the definitive World War II motion picture. You're going to be able to look at that 100 years from today if the film is preserved and say, okay, you know, this is it.
Chez sweet, American. Huh?
Buttons was featured in one of the movie's key scenes.
Okay, go! Go!
The landings of what seemed like hundreds of paratroopers into a village square was staged by special effects coordinator Alex Weldon. His credits include such combat classics as Battle of the Bulge and Patton. The paratroop assault in The Longest Day was one of Weldon's greatest challenges.
I would go up in the helicopter and I would drop these dummies, and you'd be surprised, they looked just perfect. They're just like the men coming down.
But the final scene required human actors as well.
When I was doing the steeple scene, I'm strapped and I'm hanging, and I happen to have acrophobia. So I don't know how much acting I was doing.
We had safety cables on him, so if anything happened, he wouldn't get hurt. But he went through it, and it worked out fine.
Besides its airborne troops, The Longest Day is remembered for its sheer numbers of men and its explosive effects.
We had a dolly shot with Robert Mitchum coming up from the landing craft. We had explosions going all over the beach as he was running up the hill, and it was very dusty, but it made quite a good shot, I thought. There wasn't any danger unless somebody fell right on top of the explosion. And so when we put the explosion in, we made a little mound and we put a flag behind it so the soldiers could see where the explosion was.
The job of turning beaches into battlefields belongs to professionals like Bob McCarthy, special effects coordinator and author of Secrets of Hollywood Special Effects.
Holds a total of 18 shots, this one.
McCarthy and his son Kevin demonstrate how this California coastline can be transformed into a Hollywood war zone.
Okay, what we got here, we got a 500-pound air cannon. It's all steel. We have a ball valve for quick action to dump all the air pressure in one shot. So basically we'll pressurize the tank to by 300 pounds, submerge it in the water.
When the air is released, the result is this simulated mortar explosion.
3, 2, 1!
When the Longest Day actors hit the beach, they faced perhaps the most lethal barrage of explosions in film history. The techniques used to set off these movie mines are, in fact, relatively safe.
We fill a funnel full of debris, full of earth, fire it, and you'll see it'll go up to about 40 feet in the air. Looks like a real explosion, yet you can be very close to it and can't even bother you. Safest way to do a pyro scene when you've got a lot of actors around.
The Longest Day invaders also encountered gunfire. Thousands of seemingly lethal rounds shot at stars and extras alike. One special effects secret, this BB-type rifle.
This is a Sweeney gun. We use it for dust hits, spark hits, the water hits. It's got a lot of power. It's very accurate. It's accurate for about 200 feet.
But unlike these bogus bullets, or even those frightening-sounding air cannons, some of the Longest Day's special effects were potentially dangerous. Deadly, in fact. Like this plastic explosive material, which requires skilled assembly and placement.
Action!
When recreating war for the big screen, clearly marked positions for actors and perfectly timed blasts ensure safety along with drama. In The Longest Day, the special effects work of Alex Weldon enhanced the performances of Red Buttons and that long list of stars who made the Normandy invasion a milestone in Hollywood history. General Eisenhower may have commanded the real invasion, but it took a Hollywood general, Darrell F. Zanuck, to bring the story of D-Day to theaters around the world.
War is a defining event in every century. You can go back to biblical times, Roman times. War is apparently endemic to the human race, however much it distresses it. And also it is a shaping event in history.
Through decades of movie making, it sometimes seemed as if Hollywood was destined to continue fighting World War II forever. But eventually, there were wars in other faraway lands, and filmmakers told their stories too.
Vietnam, you saw it, I saw it on TV. Didn't see World War II on TV. Weren't bombarded with images. We were pretty numbed out after Vietnam.
Predictably, Vietnam would be the subject of many films, including The Deer Hunter and Full Metal Jacket. But it wasn't until a Vietnam veteran named Oliver Stone wrote and directed a film based on his own tour of duty that most people truly experienced the fear of young men at war. The year was 1986, the film Platoon. Produced for only $6 million, it won Oscars for both Best Picture and Best Director.
The platoon that was drawn in the movie is based on composites and groups of people that I met in different units. The characters in the film, they're accurate. I mean, that's the platoon. A platoon is made up of men.
Striving for realism, Stone demanded that his actors virtually become a rifle company. Their instructor was Marine Corps Captain Dale Dye.
The only way we were going to get these Wee Willie Winky, the actor, to have any concept of what it was like to be an infantryman in the jungle was to put them in the jungle as infantrymen. They were their characters. They were new guys coming into a unit in Vietnam. Nothing else existed. He wanted them to understand the pain and the agony and the angst and the psychology of being a grunt in Vietnam.
And that's just what happened. Again, the Philippines doubled for Vietnam. Dye's recruits might have been actors, hired only to pretend, but the battle-hardened officers showed them no mercy. He even went so far as to have special effects technicians detonate explosives near the actors.
These mortar explosions went off all around him, and we got up and screamed, "Incoming, incoming, get in your holes!" And then the AK-47 fire started from outside the perimeter, just started pouring in. These guys were just crapping little green pellets.
As Special Forces guys, we're also pretty hardcore. I mean, there was some question about whether they knew the boundaries of the game.
But that would take you to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, you know what I mean? He just took you on that ride. It was absolutely, totally guerrilla filmmaking.
Oliver Stone's young platoon learned to act like soldiers. The next step was to make them look like soldiers. The dirt, grime, wounds and scars of warfare. That job was left in the skilled hands of makeup supervisor Gordon Smith, whose credits include the films Nixon and Legends of the Fall.
We had to design a specific approach to the whole picture, so we really didn't have to go back to the trailer for anything. It had to be designed so that we could literally work in front of camera, make things up on the fly. One of the deals I had to make with Oliver in order to execute this look was that the wounds, wherever possible, were all underneath the clothing. If I'm underneath the clothing, I can use the clothing itself to mask the edge of a prosthetic. In 5 minutes, I could make it look like somebody just blown your chest open.
Smith's greatest challenge on Platoon was giving Tom Berenger's character of Sergeant Barnes a distinctive, intimidating scar.
I realized that I was, even in the testing, causing damage to his skin. So I suggested to Oliver that we take a chance and that we only put the scar on him when we're shooting him in close-up and keep our fingers crossed that nobody notices. And no one noticed.
What the audience and director Oliver Stone did notice was the power and authenticity of Smith's work on Platoon's Wounded. Gaping, blood-spattered images of war and death.
What happened? Heavy problem.
Films like Platoon and Apocalypse Now marked a sharp turn away from Hollywood's earlier combat sagas. They were battle movies without classic heroes, war pictures without simple, patriotic themes. Filmmakers were chasing reality and getting closer all the time.
Destroyed Hitler's invincible dreadnought.
Ever since ships started sailing on film, Hollywood has brought us aboard war vessels and, through special effects, has made great sea battles disturbingly real. Movies like Sink the Bismarck and Run Silent, Run Deep took moviegoers on perilously authentic voyages.
One way that directors ensured that their films seemed real was by using actual footage taken by military cameramen who would risk their lives to get scenes that no Hollywood cinematographer could ever get on a set.
Their dramatic footage of carriers, battleships, and subs at war, often captured under hostile fire, was included in many Hollywood masterpieces. One of these was the 1976 movie Midway, the story of history's greatest naval engagement, the World War II turning point for United States warships in the Pacific. American sea and air power faced off against vastly superior Japanese forces, but they managed to sink 4 giant aircraft carriers and end Japan's large-scale naval threat.
I think that Midway packs a particularly powerful punch. It might have something to do with the fact that real combat footage was used from both American cameramen and Japanese cameramen.
Charlton Heston, combat film veteran, was one of Midway's stars.
They took the bait, Admiral.
The film could not have been made except that in World War II, the only military services that shot their combat footage in color were the U.S. Navy and the Japanese Navy. And that was the color footage we needed.
For producer Walter Mirisch and director Jack Smite, the combat footage blended seamlessly with the rest of the movie.
Sometime in making a film, you would have to borrow. If you can't get the exact footage you need, a particular battle that you're trying to recreate or using combat footage of, and yet you have another battle which looks an awful lot like the battle that you're showing, why not use it? Like they say, all's fair in love and war films.
For example, several of Midway's most vivid scenes were, in fact, films of other battles. Like this stunning filmed record of a carrier deck crash that took place weeks after Midway, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. But the Battle of Midway, and so many other warship epics, tell only half the story of Hollywood's naval combat history. Submarine films have been gripping moviegoers since 1930, when John Ford's Men Without Women won praise for its undersea realism. It was World War II that inspired the great sub-dramas, movies reflecting dangers shared by men on all sides.
Starrst hier, weil hier Heinz hängt.
It took German director Wolfgang Petersen to turn the submarine drama into a suspenseful, universal story. Das Boot is a movie so realistic, so stunning in its use of special effects, that it's widely considered one of the great war films of all time. This tale of a German cruise voyage during World War II and how hopeful, brave men become hardened, cynical warriors takes place largely within the sub's steel hull. The special effects team employed a hydraulically controlled mock-up sub nicknamed the Whippler. It could be pitched and rolled on a Munich soundstage.
One of the nightmares in submarines is not only the depth charges and all this sort of war machinery they get, and also the elements.
Petersen's actors spent almost 9 months of grueling cinema service inside the replica. Petersen also insisted the submarine's interiors be filmed with a special handheld camera in order to truly capture the feeling of being cramped in a sub. Gyroscopes stabilized the camera when the boat tilted at angles up to 45 degrees.
We were completely obsessed with up to every single screw in the submarine, everything right and for real. Wherever it was metal, it's metal. Wherever it was wood, it's wood. Everything is real.
Even Das Boot's miniatures, crucial for footage of the sub above and below the surface, seem real when captured on film. For many shots, this detailed miniature submarine was pulled through the water by a tugboat. Other models were used to show the submarine under attack. A large water tank with a clear glass camera window was used to film tiny depth charge explosions. Perhaps the most unusual story concerning Das Boot is what happened several years after the movie's first release. In 1997, technicians at Hollywood's Signet Sound Deluxe Studios brought the Das Boot soundtrack into the digital age. And the film was re-released with enhanced sound and an additional hour of footage.
The biggest problem was that all these original tapes that were vaulted in Germany got wet throughout all the humidity and the dampness in the vault. And they came up with a baking process. Let's bake it for 24 hours at 50 degrees Celsius, and you might have a chance playing it back once. And it worked.
The original Das Boot soundtrack was then transferred to digital tape, and Signet specialists began creating new sounds to give Das Boot's hull noises and explosions even greater drama. Their recording studio? A California swimming pool.
When we did the pool recordings, we tried to get as many props as we could think of, like trash cans and scuba bottles, up to a big canoe. The canoe metal bangs sounded underwater like huge wave impacts on the inside of the hull. And when we dropped the pitch through samplers and keyboards, we got really big impacts which sell the movement of the boat.
Peter Sullivan is sound designer for Das Boot's re-release.
For the distant depth charges, we used primarily the sound of the canoe being lifted out of the pool and slammed down about 2 or 3 feet, and that sounds like this. I will take some of the scuba tank airbursts that we recorded at the pool, then I can play them at different pitches. Then I'll take a very short-lived explosion. When it all comes together, it puts us in the audience inside the explosion. Not a spectator to it, but part of the action.
So the sound will, in this new version of Das Boot, will be is a crucial element to, first of all, to give the audience the feeling to be really inside the boat much more than it was before, and to really experience the terror of noise and the terror of silence.
Ruhig. Immer ruhig, Männer.
Indeed, Hollywood has fought and won its share of naval engagements. Thanks to today's audio wizards, Das Boot lives on with newer, more terrifying sounds of war. And the Battle of Midway will be refought for years to come, thanks to those combat cameramen who risked their lives. For combat filmmakers, airplanes have always been deadly and dramatic mainstays of war on screen. When battle zones moved aloft, Hollywood followed. Early attempts to take audiences skyward were simply filmed exhibitions by daredevil barnstormers. the planes got faster, the pilots more skilled, and the demands of modern warfare caused Hollywood to quickly catch up with aviation. Audiences demanded it, and filmmakers couldn't wait to earn their wings. It was 1927 when a former World War I pilot, director William Wellman, shocked Hollywood with his ultra-realistic portrait of air combat. The movie was Wings, and as these vintage outtakes revealed, it was the first to use airplane-mounted cameras. It also won the first ever Best Picture Oscar. That honor wasn't earned easily.
Wellman wanted to show aerial combat the way it really was, and it was up to him to virtually invent filming air battles. No one had even attempted it before. And here he is up in a plane with cameramen, risking his life, trying to show what war is like from the air.
It helped, of course, that stars Buddy Rogers and Richard Arlen were themselves former military pilots and were in the air for most of their scenes. Their aerial acrobatics, filmed with specially designed airborne cameras, were the first shots of actors in flight. Wellman had set the standard with his tribute to World War I flyers. Some 40 years later, Hollywood veteran Richard Fleischer, director of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Between Heaven and Hell, moved beyond conventional dogfights and bombing runs, staging an actual air raid for the camera.
Background action.
The movie was 1970's Tora, Tora, Tora. Fleischer was one of 4 American and Japanese directors working on it.
What I would like is the first 2 waves to go right straight through. Right. And it's the 3rd and 4th wave that'll peel off.
This rare behind-the-scenes footage shows the recreation of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Complete with the destruction of mock-up planes at Honolulu's Hickam Field and the fiery bombing of a replica of the USS Arizona.
And red and yellow will fly through, and blue, when he hits about the 3rd P-40 from this end, go on up into a break just like you're flying a pattern.
Fleischer's company had to strive for the precision of an actual attack. Pearl Harbor was one of the most dramatic war stories of all time. But in the same war, there was another story, this one a world away, portraying the cool heroism of young men who risked their lives high above enemy skies during World War II.
These are the passengers with one-way tickets, and this is the crew of the Memphis Belle. Well, fellas, we've never had an easy ride over there yet. And today won't be any different.
The movie is Memphis Belle, a true story first told in this emotional 1943 documentary. A World War II bomber crew fights to complete its 25th and last mission and survive. Quite an accomplishment, since 80% of all B-17 crews were shot down. Though it took Hollywood 50 years to make a feature about these heroic men, incredible special effects combined with extraordinary training for the actors made it well worth the wait. The Memphis Belle never actually flew during filming of the intense combat scenes.
Roll it! Rolling!
426, take 1.
Smoke out not yet?
In fact, the actors spent months inside this B-17 mock-up at London's Pinewood Studios, fighting special effects flames and flak, all the while shooting at German planes they couldn't see.
wind machine's going and you're 50 feet above the ground with the bomb bay doors open and there really is an element of you might fall, it's great because you don't have to think about it, you don't have to act, you just have to do it, and it's fun.
It was terrific. It was every, male child's fantasy, playing war without having to kill anyone.
Even before the cast was on board their Bell, they spent a grueling week of boot camp with the British Special Air Service.
They just busted our ass all day long, and they broke us so that all of our egos and all of our hype on each other and who we were and Hollywood and all that had to go down the toilet, and it did.
First man up, stay and help the next man down. Thank you, sir.
Their training, along with meeting the Bell's real crew, left actors with a special feeling for air combat dangers.
80% of the people around them were going to die, and the chances of coming back from a mission were pretty slim. But if you go up in the air believing that you're not going to come back and that you're going to get killed, I think you find yourself in some terrible trouble.
At the end of World War II, when the skies over Europe finally quieted, more than 200,000 airmen had lost their lives. From Memphis Belle's safe landing, all the way back to that first Best Picture Oscar winner, Wings, Hollywood's war films take audiences on a journey of almost a century. Through the clouds, onto mine-laden beaches, and across oceans filled with the flame and smoke of battle. Alongside those brave flyers and gunners. Nearby those daring submarine warriors. And just out of camera range from the heat of combat are the filmmakers and special effects masters, creating the sights and sounds of armed conflict. And while moviegoers shudder, while they watch dramatic cinema warfare, the people who make the illusions dream of bigger battles. For the next time, Hollywood declares war.